Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some recent events in India. And, especially for those of you uh, getting ready for those UPSC exams, I think you'll find this particularly interesting. We're really going to be focusing on how geography and geopolitics kind of intertwine. We've got some fascinating locations we're going to be talking about, ones that you might even see pop up on your mains paper, and, hey, maybe even prelims too. Who knows?
You know what's really interesting to me is how events that seem completely separate, happening all across India are actually all connected to this bigger picture of, India's place on the world stage. And that's what we're going to untangle today, these connections and why they're so important for anyone who really wants to understand, where India's headed.
Right. So let's start our journey, shall we? First stop, the Himalayas. And not just anywhere in the Himalayas. We're talking Pangong, a lake at a seriously impressive altitude of 14,300 feet. I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, a lake, big deal. What's so special about that?
Well, recently, a statue of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was unveiled on the banks of the lake. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but when you consider the location, it adds a whole other layer of symbolism. You see, Pangon Son sits right on the border between India and China.
Ah, yeah, that's a region that's seen its fair share of tension in recent years. So the statue, it's not just a tribute then, it's more like a statement.
Exactly. And it's actually sparked quite a bit of debate. Some people think a statue of Dogra General Zorawar Singh would have been a better fit for the location.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that. Why Zorawar Singh?
Well, he was a key figure in Ladakh's history. Back in the 19th century, he led a campaign that ended up with Ladakh, where Pangong Tso is, merging with the Dogra kingdom. Eventually, Ladakh became part of India.
I see. So it's all about whose story you choose to highlight in a place like this, especially in an area that's, so politically sensitive.
Precisely. And for those of you studying for the UPSC, understanding these little nuances is critical. It's about analyzing historical context, the current implications of, something like a statue. All of that can help you craft much more well-rounded answers.
Okay, so we've talked about the statue. Now let's talk about the lake itself. Pangong Tso isn't exactly your average lake, right? Tell us a little about its history, its formation.
Right. So Pangong Tso is what's called an endorheic lake. That means it doesn't flow into any other body of water, like a sea or an ocean. It's also brackish, meaning the water has more salt than a freshwater lake, but less than seawater. And that unique composition, it all comes from the way it was formed millions of years ago when the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates collided.
Wow, okay, so that's a serious collision. We're talking the forces that created the Himalayas. It's hard to even imagine the power involved in something like that.
Oh, and it gets even more interesting. Pangong Tso is actually located in what used to be the Tethys Ocean.
The Tethys Ocean.
Yeah, an ancient sea that existed way before the Himalayas were even formed. So when you look at Pangong Tso, you're looking at a remnant of a lost world, right in the middle of this modern-day geopolitical hotspot.
Okay, that is pretty mind-blowing. It's like holding a piece of history in your hand while standing on the edge of, who knows what.
Exactly. It just goes to show you how geography and geopolitics are totally linked. And that's especially true in a country like India, with so many different types of terrain, complex borders, all of that. And remember, understanding those links is about more than just memorizing facts for the UPSC. It's about building your analytical skills.
Okay, so we've spent some time high up in the Himalayas. Now let's come down to earth a bit. Head south to the backwaters of Kerala. Next up, we're exploring Vembanad Lake. This is India's second largest wetland system, right?
That's right. And it's not just beautiful, it's a designated Ramsar site. That means it's recognized internationally for its ecological importance, especially when it comes to wetland birds. But unfortunately, there have been some worrying developments that really highlight the struggles of balancing development with environmental protection.
You're talking about that 2023 study, right? The one that didn't paint a very rosy picture of the lake's health.
Exactly. The study found that Vembanad Lake is facing some serious degradation. It's losing its ability to retain water, which is affecting the livelihoods of millions of people who rely on the lake.
So this lake is a lifeline for a huge population. And if it's deteriorating, that has some serious real-world consequences. What's being done about it?
Well, there's a big push to rejuvenate Vembanad Lake, a multi-pronged effort, you could say. Part of it is about cleaning up plastic pollution. Another part is establishing something called a bioshield to help protect the lake's natural boundaries. And then there's a big push to raise awareness among the local communities about the importance of conservation.
It sounds like a massive undertaking. What are some of the more specific initiatives within this rejuvenation project? I'm especially interested in how they're involving the local communities in all of this.
One really interesting initiative is the Vembanad Lake Interpretation Center. It's designed to teach visitors about the lake's ecosystem and why it's so important to protect it. They also have a yarn museum. It's all about promoting sustainable tourism by showcasing the traditional craft of core yarn making, which is a big local industry.
So the idea is to create a sustainable model where tourism actually helps both the economy and the environment.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that these conservation efforts work best when you include the people who depend on the resource you're trying to protect.
Absolutely. This is all great stuff. But why don't we take a quick break and we'll be back with more after the break.
Sounds good. When we get back, we're switching gears. We're diving into the world of chess. We'll talk about how India is making its mark on the global stage, so stay tuned for that. All right, so welcome back. Now we're moving on from those beautiful backwaters, and we're going to dive into something completely different, a world of strategy, a world of intellectual skill, the world of chess.
Chess.
Yes, chess. You might be wondering what chess has to do with anything we've been talking about, but trust me, India's rise in the chess world. It's a story worth knowing, especially if you're prepping for those UPSC exams.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. How does chess fit into this bigger picture
Yeah.
of India's global role?
Well, think about it. Chess might seem like just, a game, a mental exercise, but it actually reflects a lot about a nation's strategic thinking, its problem-solving abilities. And 2024, well, that was a phenomenal year for Indian chess. Let's start with Konaru Humpy. She won the FIDE World Rapid Championship in New York.
That's amazing. I did hear about that. Wasn't that her second win in that championship?
It was. She's the first Indian woman to ever win it twice. And you know she's been a strong contender in this championship for years. She won bronze in 2012, then second place in 2023, and her first World Rapid title was back in 2019.
Wow. Talk about dedication. But I've got to ask, what exactly is the World Rapid Championship? How is it different from, regular chess tournaments?
Well, it's all about speed. It's a rapid-fire battle of the minds. Each player gets only 15 minutes for the whole game.
15 minutes for the entire game. That's intense.
It is. And on top of that, they get an extra 10 seconds added to their clock after each move. So you got to think fast and you got to be decisive. There's no time to second-guess yourself.
So you need incredible focus and the ability to make split-second decisions under pressure.
Absolutely. And it's not just Konaru Humpy. 2024 was a huge year for Indian chess in general. D. Gukesh, he became the youngest ever world champion. He defeated Ding Liren, who's from China. And then India also completely dominated the Chess Olympiad in Budapest, won both the open and women's sections.
Wow. So it's not just a few individuals doing well. It seems like there's a whole movement happening in Indian chess.
That's exactly right. It's not just coincidence. It points to a real system of developing chess talent in India.
This really feels like a golden age of Indian chess, wouldn't you say? What's behind all this success?
Well, there are a few things. First of all, there's just more awareness now of chess as a sport, a mind sport. That leads to more people playing at a young age. And then we're seeing more structured coaching programs popping up, more academies. And of course, having role models like Vishwanathan Anand and now Konaru Humpy, that's a huge inspiration.
So it's a combination of individual talent, but also a system that's nurturing that talent, creating a culture of excellence, so to speak.
Exactly. And that's a really important lesson for anyone preparing for the UPSC. Understanding how individual achievements are connected to broader trends in society.
It's about looking beyond the individual and seeing the bigger picture.
Right. Now let's shift gears again, back to geopolitics. But this time we're focusing on regional cooperation. Recently, the 18th edition of the Indo-Nepal Joint Military Training Exercise, called Surya Kiran, took place in Nepal.
Surya Kiran. Now that name sounds familiar. Didn't they just have one of those exercises recently in India?
They did. The 17th edition was held in India in December of 2023. So having these exercises so close together really shows how important this relationship is to both countries.
For those who might not be familiar with this exercise, can you tell us a bit more about it? What exactly is Surya Kiran and why is it so important for India and Nepal?
Well, Surya Kiran is a joint military training exercise. It happens every year, and the goal is to improve cooperation and coordination between the Indian and Nepali armies. It's a chance for them to share their expertise, their best practices in all sorts of military areas, from counterterrorism and jungle warfare to mountain warfare and disaster response.
So they're preparing for all kinds of scenarios, both traditional security threats and natural disasters.
Exactly, and that's really crucial given their shared geography, especially in the Himalayan region. That area is prone to natural disasters.
Absolutely. So what kinds of skills do they focus on in these exercises?
Well, they work on things like counterinsurgency operations, search and rescue missions, providing medical assistance. They even practice environmental conservation. It's a very holistic approach to security cooperation. Because in today's world, the threats are very complex.
It's encouraging to see this kind of collaborative spirit,
Yeah.
but I'm curious about the bigger picture. What's the overall context of the India-Nepal relationship? What are some of the historical and geopolitical factors at play here?
Well, India and Nepal have a very special relationship. It goes way back, rooted in history, culture, and geography. They share a huge open border, 1,850 kilometers long. And get this, 5 Indian states actually share a border with Nepal: Sikkim, West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. So you can see how closely connected they are. But that close proximity, it creates both opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, that's a lot of shared border to manage.
Yeah.
Are there any agreements in place to help with all those challenges?
Oh, absolutely. The foundation of their relationship is the 1950 Treaty of Peace and Friendship. It emphasizes mutual respect and cooperation between the two countries. And then there's the practical matter of water resources. Both countries rely heavily on rivers that flow through the region, so they have some key agreements to manage that, like the Koshi Agreement, the Mahakali Treaty, and the Gondek Agreement.
Those sound important, especially these days with climate change and water scarcity becoming bigger and bigger issues. Making sure those resources are shared fairly, well, that's going to be crucial for keeping the region stable in the years to come.
Couldn't agree more. And for those of you studying for the UPSC, this is a great example of why it's so important to understand transboundary water issues. It's not just about the geography. You got to think about the political and economic implications too. It can really make or break a region.
It really is amazing when you think about it. All these seemingly random events, from unveiling a statue on a lake, to trying to save a wetland, to India dominating the world of chess, to joint military exercises between countries, they all fit together. They all tell a story about India's evolving role in the world.
And that's exactly what we want you to take away from this deep dive. As you prep for the UPSC, don't just get stuck memorizing facts and figures. Try to make those connections, see those underlying patterns. Ask yourself, how does geography shape geopolitics? How do the achievements of individuals reflect a whole nation's strengths, its dreams? How does regional cooperation contribute to a country's security?
Those are the questions that really make a difference in the UPSC exam. It's about showing that you understand the connections between events, how they impact India's future.
Exactly. Now, as we wrap things up here, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to chew on. We talked about that debate over the statue at Pangongso. It raises a bigger question. How do countries choose to remember their history? Whose stories do they tell? Whose stories get left out? And how do those choices shape national identity, even influence international relations?
It's a reminder that history, well, it's never really neutral. It's always being interpreted, reinterpreted,
Yeah.
and those interpretations, they have real-world consequences.
So keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep connecting the dots. That's how you'll not only ace the UPSC, it's how you become a well-informed citizen, someone who's really engaged with the world around them.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive and found it helpful. If you did, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. And until next time, keep on learning.